Pam pam pam. It has been a while since we've been here, gathered to do some portfolio reviews. How's everyone doing? Let's make sure some epic music going on. Hey George! How are you doing? Wait, let's maybe do this one first. Oh! Hi Banana Bread! How are you doing? Let's have a look. Oh, I need to make sure that we're completely set up. Oh, epic pen going. Fine, thanks. Working on my next project, planning my next month. Oh, damn, that's awesome. Wait, what are you working on? Let's have a quick peek in the community chat. A dark mountain. I am so... Oh, yes, the cinematic. That's it. Yeah, nice. You got a good plan going forward? Hey Ben! Hey Jeremiah! How are you both doing? Welcome to the chat. Good to see you all here. Make sure that all my tools are working over here. On a second screen. There we go. Started modeling the cabin. Awesome! Coffee Diction! Hey! How are you doing? The composition is kind of locked already. I will adjust as needed. Awesome. Looking forward to what you're going to do with the composition, man. It's going to be good. Yeah, I'm doing good as well. It's been a while since we did one of these. It's been a while since we did a portfolio review, so I'm excited. I was planning to do a whole bunch of preparation, right? And like kind of structure it a little bit more. But yeah, they got kind of scattered and then I didn't do it in the end. So here we are. Got so many scattered post-it notes here that are completely irrelevant now. We'll make it work. Ben's popping in just to watch for a bit. Awesome. Coffee Addiction is working on mid-detail stages with the sci-fi scene. Yeah. Nice. It's got some good stuff happening. Yeah, I'm doing good as well. As mentioned before. What did I do today? Like, I spent a little bit of work trying to clean up. So the kind of secret project that me and a buddy of mine have been cooking up, where we're is it ready to be revealed to the public already? I've been streaming it live in the community, but I don't know, not publicly yet. We're can I say? Well, I can say anything. What am I gonna say? So, we're trying to figure out a way where we're gonna be making a scene, but also in part together with the community, and then turn that into like something new for the community, right? So, the hope is that we'll have these on a regular basis, that we can pull people from the community in that don't have work experience yet, and then give them work experience. Through our own kind of, what is it, like studio branch or whatever you want to call it. I won't reveal what we're making yet, but it's shaping up quite nice. And I think if you're part of the community, you're probably going to see an announcement about it like at the end of this month. That's when we're gonna basically open it up to like a couple of people to work on like the first thing together. I think that's gonna be freaking exciting. Hey, hello, welcome to the chat. Hey, how are you doing? So yeah, it's me and Johan William Luffler or Willie Spoon on the Discord, working on it together. He's been doing like some crazy cool benchmarky stuff where we're testing the waters when it comes to visuals, and then I've been doing the level art and setting up some of the more technical stuff. So yeah, it's been fun so far. Fun doing the scene. Right, let's switch over, shall we? Whoop. So yeah, that's been going on. What else have I been doing? Oh, yeah, like a whole bunch of admin stuff, basically. Where, because it's not only making art, right? That's the whole tricky thing about this. Like, it's more setting up like a workflow and how people are gonna keep track of their assets and all that kind of stuff. So I've been experimenting with like a whole bunch of like tracking software like Jira and Miro, and like trying to link them together and trying to make like the best possible version of tracking system that's made for artists, right? Where it's more visual than just looking at like a boring Jira board. And I think we got something working. Hi, it's my first time here. How does it happen? So, this is a stream, and welcome, by the way. This is a stream where I'll be talking about portfolio reviews. So, we're going to be looking at 3 portfolios today. And usually, well, normally the way that it goes is we'll look at community members first. So, people that support us on Patreon or something like that. And in this case, we got Ryan, Banana Bread, and we got Jeremiah here. So we're just going to be looking at 3 portfolios today. But we also have... Let me just quickly share it in the chat as well. We do have a page where you can share your portfolio as well. Let me just link that in the chat. I'm a supporter. That's awesome. Coming from DC, but did you just pick 3 people already? Yeah, we do them in sequence. So the way that you can see it in the community chat in the Discord, that's the way that we're going to be handling these. And since last month I didn't do a session, we're kind of running behind, so need to catch up. Yeah, in the next session, it will be George and Gilad. Will be the next ones for the next session. Just keeping you all up to date. All right, but without further ado, let's do some portfolio reviews, right? First one we got here is not Jeremiah, it's Ryan. Ryan Bradford over here. Environment artist for drift.io. What is that? Curious. Let me just deviate from the plan already. Oh, it's literally a game that you jump straight into. Okay, no thanks. Cool. So an environment artist for a cool online game. Usually what I'll try to do first is kind of have a look at the relevancy of the title up here, right? What you're saying and what you're actually showing. So in this case, seems like it's going pretty well. Because you got a couple of cool environments over here. You got some foliage and you got a bicycle over here as well. This one looks a bit more Arc Fizz, right? Where it looks, maybe that's just a building. Looks more archviz. So, Woodlands Forest Hideout. Foliage and organic modeling. Wanted to create a forest. Found an excellent reference from the Hitman series. Okay. Cool. Before we do that, we kind of forgot to look at the thumbnails, right? So let's do that first. When it comes to the thumbnails here, I feel like this one doesn't work that well. I feel like the other ones are kind of interesting. This one is definitely good because you got some contrast, right? So you got contrast between oh. You're kidding me. Oh god. These freaking hotkeys. So you got contrast between the foliage and the house itself, right? Which works really well to make this thumbnail stand out. Which doesn't happen too much over here. The overall thing is kind of dark and like kind of in the same spectrum. Maybe this one can actually use a little bit more color contrast as well. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll boost the colors of the thumbnail themselves rather than doing it for the whole portfolio piece, right? So that you can have your thumbnails like pop out a little bit more. I think that always works as like just an additional like visual interest, right? Yeah, I don't think this one works that well. I'm curious to see what the project actually looks like, that we can maybe come up with like a more interesting thing. And this one works quite well. An interesting object, right? It's definitely the most detailed object. So when I'm curious here, because in this lineup it's more about environments, I think this one actually shows off pretty well what you can do in a prop already from the thumbnail, right? So we've got a variation or like a good showcase of like, hey, look, I can do environment art stuff and then also make like cool looking props as well. Showing some variation. It's very good. Still keeping it relevant. Okay, so I'm curious. Let's dive into this one first then. So this is game foliage, this leaf and grass. Created in Substance Designer and then modeled and mapped in Maya. Yep, so okay. So it was actually made in Substance Designer. I think what I'll say about this one, right? Just looking at the main thing here is what foliage is this based on? Right? Because even though it is stylized, you got to be careful that you don't use stylized for... I'm not saying that you do, right? But I've seen this in the majority, and I've done this myself as well, got to be honest. Where you use stylized as like a stamp of like, oh, I'm uncomfortable because I can't get it to look right. So I'm just going to call it stylized, right? You don't want to do that. So that's why I'm wondering what kind of foliage this is based on. Because it doesn't necessarily feel like something that you would see, right? Like normally what would happen, especially in these cases, is you would have the blades and then they would kind of come down to like where they connect with the floor, right? It's when it comes to the main shape. And then yeah, the color can be interesting. I think it will be cool to have like a gradient going up, right? That's usually the way that you blend foliage with the floor itself. In this case, the floor is cobblestone, so it doesn't really make that much sense. But let's say the underneath of it is dirt. What you would have is a gradient going from brown to yellow at the top, right? So that the bottom of it actually blends with the dirt texture that you have underneath it. So yeah, that's the main thing that I would say here. Maybe... Nah, never mind. Again, the shapes here can be better defined as well, right? Because it doesn't... It has a weird shape to it, I'm going to be honest. It is cool that you try to do it in Substance Designer, though. Means that you can be very versatile in its thing, but yeah, maybe in this case it was more a limitation. So it might be cool to see what you can do when you're actually modeling the geometry. And yeah, when you actually model geometry and bake that down, where you have like all the control that you would normally have. Let's go back. Have a look at some other stuff. Student art contest submission. Valorant Icebox. Those are actual maps. That's quite cool. This is a great exercise, though. Wait, so what is happening here? So bringing in assets, retexturing, lighting and texturing. I'm trying to break this down, right? Like how you've done this, because let's have a look here. Let's have a look at the video, please. Oh, this is a showcase. Okay. Because it would have been cool. I don't know if that's just happening here, but it would have been cool if you took a map and then turned it into like a Valorant style map, right? Because I think that's like a great way to like also look at the level design as well. I don't think that's what happened, so I'm not sure actually. Oh, you know what? You know what might clear that up? If you make this a little bit clearer and just say like, hey, look, let's do an overview here, right? Step 1, this. Step 2, this. Step 3, this, right? Because here, what you're doing is bringing in assets. Cool, I get that. And then retexturing and new assets. And then also, again, retexturing. And then also retexturing. So it's like, this stuff is quite confusing to me. Where I would probably say, like, hey, look. Step 1 is bringing in assets. Step 2 is retexturing, right? Or like, yeah, let's say retexturing. And then step 3 is just pure lighting. And then this one is something called like polish, right? Try to clear up like the whole workflow a little bit and make it easy to understand for people that are looking at this stuff. And then also, you don't necessarily need that on here. Maybe you could make that into like a oh, sorry, you can't see it. Like this section over here with all the blockouts. Maybe that could be like a separate section, right? Where, or even a GIF, right? GIF progress, or maybe like, again, just like the same kind of layout. Step 1, pure blockout. Step 2, like putting some stuff in. Step 3, blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, what I'm basically trying to get to in this section is basically saying like make it it needs to be as easy as possible to understand. Right? That's the core thing. We want people to look at our portfolio and then be like, "Oh, okay, this is cool." Because I think I'm not sure what's happening now, but I think what you would try to do is, hey, I have a map. I take it from CS:GO and then I merge it with Valorant, and that's a freaking amazing idea, right? But I think the execution of it and the way you're laying it out is not clear enough for that to be understood well. But I think the actual thought process of like doing something like that is actually amazing. You could actually use that in the future as well. Let's have a look in the chat here. Sorry. Coffee Addiction is asking, what about portfolio reviews while they are still in process in Whip? I mean, usually feedback is necessary while working on it, or do people just change while it's live? No, people don't change it. Like, I will just give feedback on whatever the state of your portfolio is, right? That's the whole idea behind these streams. And then you can take that feedback, you can digest it in your own manner, and then you can do with it whatever you want. That was an interesting one. I feel like you could definitely, now that I know it's like Valorant inspired, like really boost the color, right? Boost colors on this. And make it really pop. Coffee Addiction, another good question. Does your Discord give feedback on Whipworks? Yeah, every Wednesday I do a dedicated stream to give feedback on everyone who posts their work in progress. And you get to choose whether you want like my feedback on it or not. But yeah, other people in the community give feedback as well. But I do make it like a dedicated thing every Wednesday as well. Yeah, so just going back here, Ryan, like making this pop more, definitely a good choice. Let's have a look here. This is a good presentation. It might actually help if you almost gray out like the background, right? And make this stand out a little bit more than it does now. This is so thick. Right? If the focus is more on this rather than the rest of it. Yeah. Great little showcase though. And wireframe, definitely a plus. You're showing that off too. It's good. If I can give some advice here, right? Because you got sections of rope here. What you can do next time. Oh, Ryan 3D. Hey. Going to have to leave very soon, but we'll be watching the VOD live. Watching the VOD after. That's awesome. Yep, that's why this stuff is here, right? So I was saying, if you're doing rope sections like this, and you actually seem to have quite a lot of rope, what you can do instead is make them the entire length, or like the entire height. And what that allows you to do is just tile it like this way. Okay? And then you don't have to worry about like, oh, I need another cut here. I need another cut here because I don't have that much UV space. Try to use your UV space as much as possible. And just make it tile, right? In this way, it's super easy to use it that way. So that would be tip number 1. Tip number 2 is Square off UV islands as much as possible. So whenever you have stuff like this, right, where it goes into like a weird curve, it becomes pretty awkward to texture, especially if you have patterns that are dependent on like directionality. So let's say wood, for example, you want that wood to go into like a certain direction, right? But if you have this sort of curve, what it's actually going to do is it's going to warp the texture that you're going to apply on it. So that's why we usually like square these things off and make them into like actual UV squares so that you don't have issues when it comes to that. It's also easier to pack everything together as well. Like for example, these cylinders, they can just be like square, right? And then you detach this circle here and just put that whatever you have like space. Yeah, just square everything. It's going to give you like more space and easier to work with. So space was easier, right? But the presentation of this is interesting. Like, I like the presentation here. It's simple. It focuses on the prop. You're showing wireframe. Oh yeah, George, that's a great addition. It's space. It's easier to work with, and it also doesn't give you like any jagged edges on the bake, or in any of your textures, right? Because what usually happens is if you have, how am I gonna draw this? Like if you have a diagonal like this, grid of pixels actually has to. How are we gonna draw this out? Right? Because all your textures are always pixels, right? So what actually happens is if you have a diagonal that goes this way, it will fade out some of the, like for example, this pixel, right, from your texture. It would actually fade that out to compensate because it's not completely inside of that border. So if you just straighten the edge and then ideally somewhat align it with the pixels, but that's like more minute, then you always have a full pixel of color. So that's going to help you with like your bakes as well. Great point, George. Thank you so much. Yeah, like I was saying, presentation on this is good. I like that you have like your stuff on here as well, like your name and where people can find you, right? Great stuff on that. Yeah, pretty cool stuff as well. Great job with a student art contest for WoW, right? Yeah. And then I think this is the latest one, right? So posted last month. Okay. Sculpted in ZBrush. Wait, so what was the way to develop foliage in organic modeling? I wanted to create a forest. Okay. Yeah, okay. Cool. Foliage is freaking tricky though. Especially where you want stuff to blend, right? And what's also happening currently here is with foliage, you have to watch your normal directions when it comes to your assets, right? Because what we're seeing here currently is you have this weird kind of shading where one of their planes, right, like a simple presentation, is catching the light, but then another plane that is like going across of it doesn't have any light catching on it. Usually how you can remedy that is by pointing all the normals straight up, right, so that they become like consistent, and actually deactivating the tangent space normals in the material. And so point vertex normals up. And then secondly, you wanna... I've been experimenting with this a lot, so this is very standard advice. I actually use something different on the foliage that I'm doing, but I can't remember it. Well, on the grass, right? Not all foliage. And then disabling tangent space normals. In the material. So that's what you want to do if you want to get your grass to look consistent. This doesn't necessarily apply to foliage and like especially trees. Trees, you can apply something different there, where usually you have, depending on the tree again, you have you will spherify some of the sections of a tree. If you have like a very fluffy looking tree, that's how you get it to look fluffy, because you're basically transforming the normals from a sphere onto like all the different leaves, so they get like a very fluffy look. Very quick explanation. I'm not gonna go into detail there. For these pine trees, you don't really need that approach at all. That's more for like very fluffy looking trees again. Yeah, so that was for the grass. I would say also think in your next project about like the materials and how they blend together with your grass. That's very important, because now you have like a very uniform looking dirt, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of detail going on there, right? So what you can do is you can actually have like two variations of dirt, or maybe include stones in one variation, right? So that you can at least paint in some variation. Yep. But that's enough about this kind of stuff. You're doing some interesting stuff here with shaders, I think. I think those are like... see... No, that's a seam. So this is hard baked into it, right? So... That's an interesting approach as well, Ryan. I know that I'm just dumping like a whole lot of information on you, but if you're doing something like this in your next project, look into Z-up shaders. Z-up shaders basically allow you to project based on the axis, right? So the reason why we call it Z-up is because you're projecting down onto an asset based on the normals that are pointing up, right? So that means that if you're adding a material and you add like a moss in the material, that can just be like a tileable texture, and then just project it onto it based on like the Z axis, it will actually project on all the top surfaces automatically, independent of whether you rotate it or not. Like, it will actually always project on the top surface. So what this means is that you can then use all these rocks in like a 360 way, because the moss is always going to be projected on the top of it, right? So you can actually start scattering them in your scene, and you don't have to worry about like, oh, they're rotated up in this kind of direction, right? Oh, is that a Z-up shader? Oh, okay, cool. Because it's interesting, because I saw the seam here, so I thought it was baked into it. But that might actually be like the... Oh, that could be like the seam from the rock itself then. You kind of have some seam going here as well. Okay, cool. It's good that you know about that already. Just a helpful trick for the rest of the people watching then. That's awesome. Yeah, presentation. Clean, simple, right? Straight to the point. I like it. think about potentially adding, because you did it in the last project, right? Like think about wireframes and maybe textures, right? Like UVs plus textures. Think about those. I didn't miss them, right? Oh. Yeah. I think a lot of stuff here can be really easily won. Wait, so before I dive into that, so this is from last month. What I am kind of missing is there's two things if you want to really like quickly level up your or this scene in specific, right? The first one is subsurface scattering, right? Where subsurface scattering is just light coming through all the leaves. That's also gonna get rid of the harshness of the foliage that you're currently looking at, where especially on the ferns there's like a lot of dark areas. So subsurface scattering can definitely help with that. Or maybe you have it and you just need to turn it up. And then the second thing, if you wanna make something feel more realistic, is you have to think about like how stuff blends together, right? Especially when you come to intersections like this, where you have pristine white concrete that is blending with dirt, or like not blending at this point, right? Just adding like a very simple vertex paint on this mesh and plugging in the tileable that you've already made for the landscape anyway, and just allow them to be like vertex painted on top of each other is already gonna do such a good job of like blending the two. And then maybe you can spice it up with decals. Maybe more decals like this, right? But yeah, just think about how stuff blends together as well, right? And also think about like the structure of the building itself, where I know it's a modern art kind of thing, or like a very modern type of architecture, but there's still, you want to emphasize that it's built in a certain way and that it kind of looks like it's constructed, right? But since this was like more of a foliage and organic modeling exercise, I kind of get why you were focused more on this rather than all the other stuff. Trees are looking interesting. Oh, Nacho's woken up in the back, I think. Let me see. You got like a good structure here, right? You got the leaves on it as well. With trees, you got to be careful with this sort of stuff. You kind of want to give it like a little bit of like a wiggle, right? Maybe not like this, but you can't. You ideally don't want it to look like very 3D like this. You kind of want it to give it like a little bit of noise, you know, where just a little bit can do a lot. Because I think the geometry is there, right? Because the curve is actually smooth. It's just, it looks like a perfect curve. And like, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. And you gotta love it. Like, adding those little touches is definitely gonna level it up to the next level. Cool. Yeah, but overall, I know that I'm always very critical in these portfolio reviews, right? But overall, the work on display is actually looking pretty good. Well, let's have a quick look at this bicycle, right? When is this posted? 4 months ago. Okay. Oh, that's cool. That's a cool transition. Almost missed it. It's a cool little transition with like an animated light on it. The thing that I would say here, just as like a quick last thing, right? I like the way that it looks. The textures could definitely use a bit of work, but I think the most important thing here is don't skip on geometry. Especially on stuff like this, right? Where you can tell, where you can really like almost count the amount of edges. You wanna avoid stuff like that as much as possible. Same here, right? Give it a little bit more geometry. Like make it look nice and smooth, right? Don't overdo it, but definitely make it like nice and smooth. Yeah. And apply the same thing to the background as well. Even though it's just a background, the background is actually also just very important to like the whole scene itself, right? Let me see. Hi Vanitas, welcome to the chat. How's it going? 5K verts, yeah. It's nothing, especially for a bike like that. Yeah, okay, cool. So, let's do a quick little recap, right? Especially, let's think, what would I say is the most important stuff? We talked about like a whole variation of things, right? But like if we zoom out and we actually look at the whole portfolio, let's think about a couple of things. Number one is make thumbnails pop. Thumbnails pop. Especially on the Valorant one, right? Like it's so what I say, like it's so inherent to that franchise or like to that game to make it pop. Just push up like the color saturation and just make it really pop. Second, what can we say? I feel, let's maybe say, I feel almost take time for details. Take your time with the details, right? Because details are important. And then step 3 would actually be to maybe for this occasion, kind of links into the same thing. I was about to say like show more details, right? But like yeah, I almost want to say like focus on smaller quality. Because the reason why I say that is because I see that you're trying to push bigger and bigger, but bigger doesn't really mean better, right? What you actually want to do is sometimes take a step back and like really polish up on like the foundational elements and then go bigger again. Or do a diorama or whatever, right? So those are like the top 3 things that I would say for this portfolio. Like quick fix, make the thumbnails pop, Second thing is going to be like a bigger thing for next projects. It's take time for details and like really find references for them. And try to go a little bit smaller and focus on the quality. That's what I would consider for this portfolio. Thank you so much for putting it up there, Ryan. I hope this makes sense. And if it doesn't, feel free to just ping me a message in the Discord if you want to. All right, let's jump over to the next one. Oh, Vanita's good. You found it? Hi, Justin Raymond Ramos. How's it going? Let's catch up on the chat as well, right? Just wanted to add some info for my turn later. Okay, I'll get to that later then, Jeremiah. Route 1 is gonna go back to the Batman scene and fix some stuff after this mini project. Yeah, sounds good. Alright, let's get some context here because I think Banana Bread posted it and said or asked for specific stuff. Let's have a look here. So Banana Bread is asking for I finished, well, basically asking or like saying, I finished the redesign of my website portfolio, would like some feedback on the design. The assets are just templates for now. I think they might have been actually filled up already, right? It's been quite a while since I looked at it. With 2 questions, is it simple and understandable, and is it missing any necessary features? I'm gonna say it already looks like a way better and less convoluted than last time. I think if you want to have like the gold standard, right? Like ArtStation is right there, and I think you're taking like good cues from it. But this is already like way better than before, like by a lot. Like I like the simple layout. Actually taking like a lot of cues from this stuff as well. Yeah. So definitely way better than before, Banana Bread. Good job on that. Before I continue, sorry, Banana Bread, Ryan is asking a question. So just a quick question before you move on. How hireable do you think my portfolio is? I'd really love to get a junior position with a larger studio. That is honestly a question that I can't answer. Just because of the reason of it depends. It depends so much on what studio you're applying for and who is looking at your portfolio. The best thing that I can say, I know this is kind of like a cop-out answer, right? Is just try and see if you get any opportunities. Because it doesn't depend on one person, right? In this case, me, because I can tell you, for example, yes or no, doesn't matter in this case. But you shouldn't base that just purely on what I'm saying. Do you get what I'm do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's not up to me if I'm gonna hire you or not, right? It's up to the individual people and the studio that they're working with. Like, they get to make that decision. Maybe to not dodge around like the question completely. Do I think that you could already start looking? Yeah. I think so. Just give it a try, right? Because that's the thing, like, I think a lot of people wait until they have that that latest piece on their portfolio, but it doesn't matter. Just try it, right? Nacho was just trying to dig underneath the table. What you doing? Okay. But back to your portfolio, Banana Bread. Is it missing any necessary features? No, it's presenting your portfolio, right? I don't think it's necessarily missing anything. Got some links up in here as well. You got Beyond Extent there. That's awesome. Thank you. What is that? Booth Marketplace? I think it's simple and to the point, you know? Just an introduction. Hey, this is who I am. Let's have a look. A resume. Like a resume, wait, let's see. So contact me. What's in there? Oh, that's just that. Okay. Yeah, like I would honestly add like resume here. Even if that doesn't include like any professional work experience up until this point, I would already add it in there, right? So that people can get like a more in-depth look of who you are as a person and what you're interested in, right? So that would definitely be missing. And then Banana Bread is also asking in the chat, can you also give me feedback on how to present my work on ArtStation? Not on the website, because the website still has the old pictures. I'm not sure I understand. Like, you want me to help you present it on ArtStation, but not on... Oh, not on the website? Wait, so you also have like an ArtStation? Okay. Can I ask you a question back, Banana Bread? If you're applying to a studio, what do you send to people? And I think you're just asking for like feedback on the work on here, right? And how to present it. So sure, let's have a look. The website? I don't understand, Banana Bread. Oh! That was in reference to my question. So silly. The website. Okay. So in that case, what's the point of having an ArtStation? Right? Is it just for exposure? Because if you're sending people, I know that I'm being very picky, right? But like if you're sending people, oh, I wanted to move it to the website, but first I wanted you to check and tell me that it's not bad. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're not gonna do it on ArtStation anymore. You're just uploading temporarily here. Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's have a look at the thumbnails then. Let's do that first. Because I think a lot of what we discussed last time still stands, right? In terms of like general, like how to model and how to do the workflow and all that stuff. So I'm gonna see what we can say about the thumbnails. And I'm probably only gonna focus on the stuff that I haven't seen yet, to be honest. So there will probably be these three, right? Haven't seen those yet. So what I can say about those three is try to make the thumbnails a bit more interesting than they currently are. I would honestly, I know that it's beyond extent, right? So I know that I'm going to be biased, but like make this smaller or even just use like the little logo like in the corner, right? Because what you want to do is you want the majority of the thumbnail to be taken up by your asset in the best sort of way. So putting Beyond Extent on there, again, appreciate it, but I think it's taken away from the actual asset. So try to make like the Beyond Extent thing like a little bit smaller. And the same can apply for the Fallout Vegas one. The Fallout New Vegas one, right? Is where you just have that in the corner. Also important with this one, say that it's fan art on the thumbnail. You don't want to give like any false impression that you worked on the game and this is an actual game asset, right? Like you don't want to, you don't want to give like any false pretenses when it comes to it. Then when it comes to the actual thumbnails, I would think for this one, think about the angle. Think about the angle of it, because the angle is just like a head-on, right? It doesn't have like a very interesting angle currently. So usually like rotating it like 3/4 view or something like that is already going to make it more interesting. And then majority is about presentation, right? Like how do you light it? And how does the camera work with it as well? Especially here, right? This is a great example of what lights can contribute, and if you turn them up too much, it might actually detract from what you can see. What I mean by that is that this thumbnail is like mainly dominated by bloom plus white colors, right? And especially these colors, these white colors, they are clipping. What clipping means is that we can't see the values anymore. We can't distinguish the values. So that means, in like a very simple term, that we kind of look at it as flat because it doesn't have like a gradient that makes it feel round in this case. So you got to be careful that you don't clip any values. So watch out for clipping. Gotta watch out for it. Yeah, and then when it comes to this one, kind of the same can be applied here as well. The angle is actually a little bit better, right? Because we're looking at it with like slightly on an angle. So I think the angle itself is actually already better. I think what could be cool is if you zoom in on like a certain section, right? And then once people click on it, they see the full object. I think that's an interesting approach, I feel, instead of just showing it off like very, very sterile feeling. So, because what you want to do with a thumbnail, right? If you really strip out like all the artistic value of it and like all the hard work you put into it, what you want to do with a thumbnail is make people click on it, right? So how you can do that is zoom in on an interesting part, like the most interesting part. Zoom in on something that people can instantly like relate to, so like the Fallout logo or like the Nuka-Cola brand or something like that, right? To kind of relate it to like the games that they played. Or just focus on like an interesting shot that shows like a lot of contrast and has like a lot of interesting visual details, right? That's also going to pull people in too. So there's a lot of ways that you can make people click on like a post, right? And this counts for ArtStation, also goes for social media and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, try experimenting with like interesting angles and interesting presentations. How you can actually test that, and this is something that I do as well, is I go to the front page, I take a snapshot of the entire front page of ArtStation, I then remove like a random artwork from it, and then I put my artwork in there so that I can see if the angle and the shot that I'm taking actually stands out from the rest of it on our station. Obviously, there's a balance there. You don't want to like completely saturate the colors or like go like super clickbaity, right? Because there still needs to be like some let's call it artistic integrity, right? That you don't pull people into something that doesn't exist. You don't want to do something like that. But it can be a good way of testing like the waters a little bit, right? Where you see how stuff stands out. So yeah, I think that's it when it comes to the thumbnails. Let's actually have a look at one of these. Let's click here. I'm a big Fallout fan, so let's have a look here. Fan-made Nuka-Cola vending machine. Okay. Okay, so you do bake it. That's interesting. The reason why I say interesting is because I feel there's something going on with the geometry. Maybe it's the harsh lighting as well. But the reason why I'm surprised by that it's baked is that you see these edges, they feel like sharp. Same for these as well. Same for these as well. So I think either the bake didn't come out correctly, right? Or you want to increase your bevel size. I think increasing the bevel size is what you want to do anyway. And with bevel size, I mean the bevel size in your high poly, right? And that's going to give you like smoother edges. It's already going to help. Because this one is decent. I'm just not sure if that's just pure geometry. Yeah, it looks like it's pure geometry. Wait, that one is... what? No, that might just be wireframe thickness. Okay. Yeah, that one is geometry, right? If you're doing a baked workflow, you don't necessarily need that much geometry because that's why you bake down a normal map anyway, right? It's because you have limitations when it comes to your geometry that you need to bake it down to fake that detail. Yeah. I also don't know what's happening with the AO in like certain regions, like certain sections like feel like really dark, especially like the top one as well. Maybe that's coming from a smart material. Like it feels like really dark, you know, like darker than it's supposed to be. Like this entire area, basically. I don't want to get deviated too much, right? Like I'm just giving like individual feedback at this point. Let's take a step back and actually think about the presentation of your portfolio. What is interesting and what a lot of people do, right, is they kind of put like a fake call it like a fake little bit of landscape or a fake floor. Oh my god. And that elevates the presentation of the whole thing, right? Because I'm thinking about Fallout 4 or Fallout 3, where you see these, right? And I'm already imagining like the broken up tile, right? Like on the floor. You have like broken tiles on the floor because this is just like a stereotypical like like tiled floor underneath it, and then maybe there's like little bits of grass grown in between it. Maybe there's like a puddle over here, right? Maybe there's like some broken glass because like some of the Nuka-Cola bottles fell out. You know that there's so much that you can do to add like little bits of character. Floor plus character. And I think that's what you can do to your entire object, right? Is to focus on the character and to actually elevate it with like little bits of like specific detail. Where you just make it like really personal, right? And you can do that by thinking about the interaction, how people think, or like how people interact with this machine. Make it personal. So with Make It Personal, this is not going to go for like a vending machine. Well, maybe it can, right? With making it personal, in this case, with a vending machine, think about like the production labels, right? Like from the company's standpoint. Like they usually have like serial numbers on the back and like stamps to indicate that this is like a Nuka-Cola owned property and all that kind of stuff, right? What it usually means is if this is an object that a person owned, like you can link that to the person and in that way make it personal. Right, so that's a way of like elevating the presentation of the asset itself. Because you got to think about games. Like games are all about stories, right? And especially if you're trying to show off like a single prop, people want to see a story like that happened there. So you got to focus on the details. You add a little bit of character, and that will elevate the presentation together with the floor that's linked to it. And like you gotta level it up to the next level, right? And that can be applied to probably like your other pieces as well, right? Same here. I'll give an example, right? I'm gonna bring my friend into this. So if you look at this, is also just a presentation of a gun, right? But like, look at all the time spent on adding like little bits and like really finessing the presentation on it, right? Experimenting with colors, and it's not just a flat color, right? It has like smudges and detail on it as well. And I can bring it to the next level, you know? Like, look at this. That's the sort of presentation you can aim for, right? And then also thinking about the lighting, right? And again, putting in those like details as well. And make sure, oh, this is cool. Like you got breakdowns here as well from the maps. That's cool. Be careful with stuff like this. Because that's the thing, right? Like the reason why I say that it's good to show wireframes is because you're trying to show off that you know what you're doing. And if tiny things like this is a stretched UV, right? That's a clear issue. But you still decided to put it on your portfolio, right? What that means is that you probably knew that this was a thing. Oh, you did not even see that? Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like that shows that for lack of better wording, like you're not really paying attention to this. Or if you've seen it, then it could be like a deliberate thing where you're just like, I'm just gonna ignore it, right? I know that I'm being a little bit harsh here, sorry about that, but that's you gotta always think about how this stuff is perceived when it comes to the people that are recruiting you, right? They might not say it, but they might think it, right? And the same here. The same feedback can also apply. Like I was talking to Ryan, the previous portfolio as well, is that you're making decent use of your space, right? But think about stuff like this where you have like weird curves or like these little curves especially, right? Like try to square them up as much as possible. Makes it way easier to texture. And yeah, try to remove stretching as much as possible. This don't know what that actually is. Is that part of the main frame or something? Has that little thingy on it? Oh, that's that. Oh, okay. That's cool then. Is it though? Yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna dive too deep into it again. But yeah. That's what I would say is are sort of like easy fixes here, right? Is just to level up the presentation. Think about your lighting as well. Lighting is so important, and it's like its own discipline for a good reason, right? Because I kid you not, like lighting can make or break an asset, right? Like you can make a ridiculously good looking asset, but then if you light it in a bad way, like it doesn't matter. Like it completely falls through. Let's have a look here in the chat, actually. So, Brand Slam Dunk, do you sometimes have bevels on low poly assets too, or would it have to be 1 or 2 bevels? So, it's a good question, right? First of all, but it's a broad one because it depends on the target platform. It depends on what kind of game you're making. When it comes to presenting stuff on your portfolio, especially if you're working towards like AAA games, add more geometry rather than like not too much, right? There's a balancing act that needs to happen, right? Basically what it comes down to, if we were to simplify it, right, and like super generalize stuff, if you're looking from like a camera distance from, let's say, like a meter, I don't want to see jagged edges when it comes to geometry, right? I don't know. It's a very quick thing that I just came up with, but let's say something like that can maybe help you like look at geometry in like a new way, or like how much geometry you need to put on it. Yeah. Yeah, but that's let's have a look at some of the other stuff here, Banana Bread. Let's actually have a look at the 3D model here, right? Look, wireframe. This is actually also interesting, right? Like this goes into what we were just talking about, literally. If you have stuff like this happen, where the model is black, and I mean in the wireframe, right? If it's fully black, that means you have too many edges there. Another good way to help with that, so this is like option 1, right? If you're looking at geometry and how you want to optimize stuff. Geometry to me, and to like a lot of people, is more about the consistency between assets rather than the individuality of like a single bevel. Does that make sense? Like what I mean with that is if this is your bevel, right? If this is your bevel, then if you have a bevel on this, even though the bevel is smaller, you'll probably know like the density of the bevel itself by just looking at another bevel that's looking good. Right? So what you're doing there is probably just using the not the same amount of edges, but like generally the density of the geometry needs to be kind of the same. Right? So if I do like a quick example here, let's make it really simple, right? So I have this bevel here, but then if I have an object that is like way smaller, like let's say that's my object here. That's not gonna need a bevel because that bevel is actually smaller than this bevel that already looks good. Right? So you can kind of apply that. It's more about like how consistent it is in density rather than making the individual thing like look really smooth and rounded. Because what usually happens is we zoom into stuff and then give it like a whole bunch of bevels where it doesn't need to be. Right? Like here, for example. Yeah, presentation, watch out with bloom, right? We already kind of discussed that. This is a good, what I mean with like good, what is it, like space, right? Like the amount of space that your asset is taking up here is actually really good. Here, it's just the logos getting in the way, right? Like, make it something more like this. You could probably even have like two of them like side by side. You're doing like a presentation like this, right? Like a side by side thing. Would be cool to have it opened as well. Do like internals, give it some detail. Would be awesome. Hey Bikes! How's it going? So yeah, I hope that helped, Banana Bread. Some useful little tips and tricks in there to level up. To level up to the next level. Final thing, if we're talking about lighting, one of the things that I love to look at is product photography or automotive photography. Because they have, like for bigger objects, that you can probably look at like automotive photography, right? Because they have like cool setups with like soft boxes and whatever. And then for smaller stuff, you can look at product photography and how they do it. They usually have like interesting real world applications that we can just translate into Unreal, make it look good. So yeah, let's do a recap, shall we? So recap number 1 is angle and thumbnail presentation. So what I mean by that is the presentation, the thumbnails that you have currently, like if you just tweak or if you're taking another shot from the asset, make it look more interesting, that can already help you a lot, right? That's like a quick win. Second thing that was really big is add character, right? That's probably the second biggest one. Unspell character. What we mean by this is the stuff that we discussed where you add more details that make it look like more bespoke, right? Like on the Nuka-Cola machine, like how they're using that, or if certain people interacted with it in a certain way, right? And then number 3, let's say add character and detail, right? They sort of go hand in hand. And then number 3, sliding, right? Focus on the last 10% when it comes to the presentation, and lighting is going to be such a big one. It might honestly, we might even need to switch this between 1 and 3. Because this is a quick win, right? Like the thumbnails presentation is a quick win, but I think lighting is going to level up the whole thing. So, yeah. That would be my top 3 things to work on in the future. Thank you so much for putting your portfolio up for review, Banana Bread. Appreciate it. And yeah, good luck with your portfolio. Thanks for the feedback. No worries. Happy to help. And thanks for being so receptive as well. I know, again, I say this, I know that I'm very critical when it comes to this stuff, right? Even though I do know that you're taking it well, and the stuff that we've seen since last time, freaking amazing, right? Like how you applied all the stuff that we talked about and the drastic steps that you took to improve your portfolio. Awesome stuff. Keep that up. Yeah, it needs a spicy presentation. Hell yeah, bikes. All right. It's my turn. Yes, it is. Wait, so you gave like a bunch of additional stuff to look into, right? Just wanted to add some information for my turn later. I'm working on another environment in the prop at the moment, so it will look fuller in a month or two, but I've been applying to some studios recently and I know they got rejections, or sometimes they also don't respond at all. Okay. Cool and also not cool, right? It always sucks when you just get ghosted by companies. However, don't let that deter you, right? From like applying. I don't know the number of companies that you've applied to. But just keep at it, right? Just keep at it, because I guess story time when I was applying in the beginning, it was 5 Jan. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You need to update the number. when I was applying, and I'm talking about like from student, right? Like I had a mediocre portfolio, like nothing spectacular, not to the same degree that your portfolio is right now. Like not even lying. Like my portfolio was pretty bare bones. But I applied to I think 100, 150 companies, and I think 10 of them responded. All no's, right? And I think in the end, like one of them took me on as like an intern, right? Out of 150, I think, let's say. I can't remember the exact number. I just know that the Excel sheet was long. So sometimes you just have to keep at it, right? I think if you're only if you've only reached out to 5 companies, like try to reach out to more, get like a bigger sampling pool, and then see what the response is there, right? I know this might sound weird, and it's also the industry in general is getting better at just responding to people, like especially if they're applying for a job, right? So don't think the thing that I'm gonna say next as like the thing to do. But if you're getting rejected and they send you like an email, weirdly enough, that's already a good sign, because that means that they took the time to look at your portfolio, they've done a deep dive and then rejected you. Right? Not in all cases, but I would say in most cases. I think the worst that you can get is probably ghosted, right? Because then they just didn't look at it, highly likely. Or yeah, just getting an automatic rejection, right? Those are the worst, I feel. Yeah, just a long-winded way of saying like, don't let this get you discouraged, right? So yeah, don't let that get you discouraged and just keep on trucking. All right, let's actually get into this portfolio. Environment artist, currently looking for opportunities. Let's start out with the thumbnails, right? Let's have a look at this first. Got an 80 level on there. Got a Crash Bandicoot fan art in there. You got a really nice saw looking here. Presentation is good. You know, like all the thumbnails look really good. Like this one as well. Like I feel like I've seen the presentation before. I mean, I've seen the presentation before, as in, I think that's a template that they use for Crash Bandicoot as well. I think, or it's at least very similar, right? It's recognizable. Hey, Victor. Yeah, that's awesome. You got this, Jeremiah. Exactly. Yeah. Thumbnails are looking really good. I think the only thing, and this is like a tiny thing, right? Watch out with the sharpening on this one. That's the only thing I want to say. Like it's almost like it's over sharpened, you know? Let me get rid of all this stuff. Like it's almost it doesn't have that softness anymore. You know, from like a thumbnail, especially because this one looks so nice and soft, you know? And then this one kind of has that harshness. Like, or yeah, as you're saying it, like too fried. Yep. Let's add that. Too fried of a thumbnail, man. But honestly, that's the only thing. I like what I'm seeing here. It's a good job on the thumbnail game. Let's actually look at the fried one first, right? Let's have a look at it. Nature said no thanks. I decided to make a piece after scrolling through pictures of abandoned. Sculpting damage. Limited time. Took advantage of Quicksil Bridge. Vegetation was made by myself. That's awesome. Yeah, great stuff, Jeremiah. Exactly. Justin is saying it. That's cool. You did a great job on the foliage then, man. Is that made by you, or is that you saying you made the ass? I'm assuming that you made like all the foliage yourself as well. Or am I misunderstanding that? Came in pretty quick. And it does look like really detailed. Oh, so you did make like this ivy stuff yourself? And I mean this in a good way, right? Like if you did this yourself, this looks really good. Oh, the textures are from Mega Scans for the foliage. I thought so. So I would clarify that just a little bit, right? I know that it's like a tiny thing, but this was just confusing because I thought that the vegetation was made by yourself. And it was like, damn, that vegetation is looking good, you know? Just clarify that the textures are... Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, if you say the foliage is made by me, then I'm assuming that you did all of it, including the textures, right? I think a better way to explain it would actually be to say, like, all the foliage models were made by myself, right? I know that it might sound like a splitting hair kind of thing, but it's actually kind of important. Because I initially assumed that this was Quicksil's, right? Yeah, just have to be careful with that. Yeah. Anyway, stuff here is looking good though, man. Looking nice. I like the presentation. Good focal point. I feel like the tank blends in. I mean, it's a freaking tank, so it should kind of blend in, right? But I feel like maybe if there was one thing that I would say as like general art advice, right? Not anything specific, is try to make your focal point stand out a little bit more. You're doing a great job with actually having like the god rays already shining into it, and then the back where it's actually like what is the word? I don't know. Whatever. Like if you're cutting it out with like the hole in the back, right? So that works really well. And then the shadow and then the path. Like all the components are there. I feel that the thing itself doesn't stand out enough. I don't know. I know it's very generic art advice, but Did a good job on the foliage. The assets look good. Yeah. Cool stuff, man. Cool stuff. Let's have a look at this sauce, shall we? First time going through the full art pipeline. Awesome. Most challenging parts to recreate all the details. Cool stuff. This is actually interesting form of presentation. I actually like this, where you can really zoom in on like all the texture detail. It's cool. Great job on choosing that. Also, picking up on all the love you put into it. This is what we mean with character, right? Where it has like little mismatches here and there, and it's actually like breaking up the silhouette. It's looking really good. Adds like a little bit of flavor to it all. I think the tricky thing with this sort of stuff is the subtlety of the layering, right? And I think you've done a pretty good job for the most part, I would say. But sometimes you gotta be careful with making stuff or like having too much noise on an asset. Like I'm saying, like you've done a good job, right, for the most part, but sometimes it goes into a terrain of like it's kind of missing the readability of the textures themselves, where you could have probably achieved more by keeping it simpler, you know, like less is more kind of thing. But the amount of layers and the attention to detail here is very good though. One small thing pointing out, like you have this grain going over the wood. Probably want to switch that up for this one, right? Again, tiny thing. I can only point this stuff out because you've done such a good job on the rest of it, right? So good stuff. Nice. Cool as well. Presentation, top notch, right? Like just adding so much character to this. Nice. How do you get these kind of details of macro shots that still holds up the detail, 4K textures, and high texel density? Yeah, high texel density, but this is 2K. Nice. Did you... Gonna see. Nah, I don't think. Well, maybe the blade might be. Like, I'm just looking for symmetry, but presentation is neat. Yeah, good job on this. Great job. Just gonna quickly have a look at this one. I think it's more of, I mean, I don't want to sound bad. Right? Like, it's more of the same that we saw before, right? So, largely using mega scans and then making like a unique asset in there. Let me see if I'm right. Different pieces. Oh, okay, so this is more of like a compositional piece, right? Composition and lighting. Cool. Nice one. I like what you did with the thumbnail as well. It's making it pop just a little bit more. Oh, saw that one already. Let's have a look at this one, shall we? Yeah, and like you said, on the saw, right? Like the breakdown stuff is kind of missing. But since you brought that up, like I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Look here. So this is okay. So it's also like a consistent art style kind of thing throughout all the assets, like a sculpting exercise. This is cool though. Very cool. Yeah, showing off that you can sculpt. It would be kind of cool to take one of these and like fully go through the pipeline with it, right? Potentially this one. This one has so much character. So nice. Would be cool to see it like fully textured, right? Baked down, fully textured, all that stuff. Be cool. My initial point of view was if it looks nice, it doesn't matter to have breakdowns and stuff. But I get it now. Oh, the first one's on. Yeah, that's why you put it first, right? Makes sense. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're making an environment along the same lines. Awesome. Looking forward to that. You were saying, yeah, oh yeah, your initial point of view was that breakdowns doesn't matter, but yeah, the whole reason why breakdowns are so valuable to put on your portfolio, especially if you're going into the industry, is because it removes questions from the minds of people that are in a position to recruit you, right? That's the whole thing you're trying to do when you show breakdowns, is you're trying to be as transparent as possible so that the people looking at your stuff can easily or be more easily convinced of like, oh yeah, this person totally knows what they're doing, and then hire you. So yeah, that's why the whole breakdown thing keeps coming up, right? Like with me and Dynasty as well, like when he does his portfolio reviews. Yeah, great stuff, Jeremiah. I'm curious what you're gonna do with making more fully fledged assets, right? Because if we kind of look at it, like if we kind of do like a breakdown and we look at all the individual pieces here and what they focus on, we can actually come up with something like this, right? So composition, lighting. This one, I would say the majority of it also composition plus lighting. Right? And then you also did some assets in here, right? So I would say if we're going to generalize here a bit, right? So composition and lighting, I'm going to keep it at that. So, and this is high quality prop plus full pipeline. Full pipe. And then this is sculpt. Right? So if we break it down in that way, you're remedying it already, right? You're working on the next thing. What you can see becomes an issue is I can definitely see that you have artistic insight, right? And you have like a knack for composition, and you've also done a really good job at creating like a high quality prop. But this one high quality prop, I'm still curious if you can replicate that with something else as well, right? I know that you can sculpt, but I'm still curious if you can do like an additional prop that went through the full pipeline as well, because that's what the majority of this portfolio or like currently kind of hinges on, right? Is this one looks awesome, right? But I don't know if you did that because I mean I'm not trying to like diminish what you did, right? But from like a recruitment point perspective, I could still be like, okay, I'm still curious if you can do that again, right? So that's why I'm putting so much focus on this. Where composition and lighting is very very relevant, right? Because it focuses more on like the foundational aspects of being an artist, because composition and light is going to be something that's going to be used in everything. Just that's a simple way of like breaking it down, right? If you step back, and this is not only for you, Jeremiah, but for like everyone in the chat. If you want to see where your skills are lacking, or what you're not showing off correctly, and you might have the skills to do it, break down your portfolio in this kind of way. See what you want to become, right? So like step 1 is do a portfolio breakdown. So step 1 is portfolio breakdown. Then you know what your portfolio entails, right? Do a personal assessment as well. What are your skills, and what is your goal? What do you want to become? Right? And then by comparing those two, fix what's missing. Right? That's kind of the exercise that we just did here. And it's a very, very quick way of telling, like, okay, like, I know that I'm showing this off. I know that if I want to become, let's say, a prop artist, right? To make it really simple in this case, I'm going to need more props to show off. It's like a very clear and objective way of looking at things. Let's do a quick recap here, shall we? Overall, the portfolio is in a good place. Number 1, right, is the breakdown stuff. I think the work itself is showing off that you can do what you're doing, right? But I think breakdowns can just demystify some of the questions that you might have. Number 2 is, yeah, like we said, like fix up missing stuff, right? That's what you're doing right now. That's already good. And then number 3, I know there's not that much to say, but like, wait, fix up missing stuff. Oh, wait, let's actually add the descriptions here, right? Like being more concise and also more direct with what you did and what you didn't do. And this can also help with a breakdown, right? What you can do in a breakdown is say like, oh, these are all the assets that I made. And then just say like all the rest that's not on here, like I've used from Megascans, right? That's like a clear visual way of saying like, hey, look, this is what I made, and this is all the stuff that I used from Megascans. And number 3, keep up the awesome work. Keep this up, and you're gonna do good. I know that number 3 is kind of a cop-out, but hey, sometimes it's kind of nice to end on a high note as well, right? It's just great stuff already on display, right? Like you're showing off that you got good artistic foundations. You know what you're doing with lighting. You know how to present your stuff. Yeah, doing good. Keep it up. Everything is so clear and useful. Thanks a lot. No worries, Jeremiah. Thank you so much for putting your portfolio up for review as well. I appreciate it. Awesome. And I think that was it for today. We're gonna stick to 3 because we're coming up to like 2 hours already. I'm just gonna switch it over. Just, oh. There we go. Yeah, thanks so much. Did I actually miss some of the questions in the chat? Because not been paying so much attention to like all the questions. Let me actually have a look here. Hey. Yeah, I'm gonna stick around for like, I don't know, let's say 15 more minutes. So if you wanna bring up, like, what was the most, let's have a question here, right? Like, what was the most useful piece of advice that I rambled on during this chat? What was one thing where you were like, ah, damn, that clicks? Because I know that in a lot of cases we're just talking about like the same thing, just different portfolios, right? But I think that's also making them more relevant as well. I think honestly, like the best advice is probably the last thing that I said, where if you're, yeah, the breakdown thing, right? Like if you break it down in terms of what you want to achieve or what you as best as you can, like breaking it down into what recruiters are looking for, right? The closer that you can get, the more likely it is that you're going to get a job in the industry. Yeah. Oh, and the tips you gave me with ideas for future props and environments, or just posts in general. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I love doing these things. It's I like to go very in depth with this kind of stuff, right? Normally like these things like run for like 2 hours or something like that. Justin Raymond Ramos is saying, for me, it's adding the character on the background, not just the renders of the props. Yeah, yeah. Like, I think people thoroughly underestimate what that does, right? Because, again, if we look at it in a way, what we're saying with our art is if we just make a cool looking prop, we're showing off that we can do the pipeline, right? We can make a cool prop, and that's what you're showing off. But if you then start adding character on top of it, you're showing off like a more diverse side of what you can actually do, right? Because it's also a very easy way to stand out from the crowd, because a lot of people can actually make a prop, right? Especially if you look at like the broad student base that we have now in game art. A lot of people can make a good looking prop, right? But like not a lot of people can add character and detail that personalizes that prop and gives it a story. And that's what we love, right? Like I said before, like we love that story. We love that you can tell from a prop, or that you can even discover little things about the person that used that prop by just looking at a prop, right? That's so awesome. There's people that do it really well. Bram Sam Dunk is saying, just now when you talked about your post, what your project or post is showing off, high quality prop, lighting, composition. Yeah, that's very valuable. I think the difficulty there is you're kind of working with a context of kind of need to know what the recruiter is looking for, which might be tricky from like a student perspective. So I try to demystify that as much as possible, even though I also have to keep it like very generic, right? Because the benefit that a recruiter has is that they know the sort of person that they're looking for, right? Like in general terms. Which if you're looking from the outside in, you can't rely on such a specifically defined set, right? Because you don't know what the person is looking for on the other side. Jeremiah has another question. Right now I'm making a stylized environment and also texturing a realistic rifle, but I'm not sure what I like best, stylized or realistic. Is it weird to have both on my portfolio? This is a very good question. Very good question. Because I feel honestly like there's a 50-50 split, right? And I'll see if I can make both arguments from both sides, right? Obviously, if you focus on like one thing, what you're showing off is that you're set on making that specific style and you're very focused on just improving that style and the way that that works, right? It makes you more specialized. That's probably a way of saying it better. Whereas if you have like multiple styles, like it can potentially show that you don't know what you want to do yet, or like both. And again, if we then reflect that on like a recruiter perspective, they might be like, oh, I see that you do like both styles, but we only do like stylized. Are you going to be happy with that? Right? Because also like a studio ideally wants you to be happy and fulfilled in the stuff that you're pursuing. So that's why potentially a lot of people say that it's not advised to work both in stylized and realistic. Also, because a jack of all trades is a master of none, right? You might have heard that before, but the same applies to a style. Because stylized has like a lot of intricacies to it compared to, well, both styles have a lot of intricacies to it. But usually they are done in a very specific way, right? Let's say if you make stylized, you're going to be leaning more into sculpting, where realistic might lean more into like photogrammetry or whatever, right? Depending on the portfolio. Or depending on the project. So it's basically a long-winded way of saying that I don't know. I tend to lean into more of the respect of like just do what you like to do, right? And if that is like, if you don't know that yet, just put it on your portfolio. And over time, you will find out what you're gonna be more geared towards, right? In your case, Jeremiah, if we look at your portfolio, 3 of the 4 portfolio pieces are realistic, right? So if you add a stylized piece to it, you're still gonna have the majority realistic, and then if you add a gun to it, it's still gonna be weighted towards the realistic side of things. That's also a way of looking at it too, right? Oh, Jeremiah saying, oh yeah, for sure. I thought it's such a tough choice for me right now that I thought to go on making both until I realized what I like the most. Yeah. I think you can definitely pursue that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's totally fine. I think there's also a danger with looking through the perspective of a potential recruitment, right? Because the advice that I would also that I would always give gears towards more specialized, dedicated artist, right? But art is also something that's like very fluid, and like you discover new things over time, and then you put that in your toolkit, or maybe you decide that at a certain point, like the way that realistic with photogrammetry is not the thing that you want to do. You want to do more handcrafted stuff. Like it's a very fluid thing, you know? Like I feel like most people, it takes a while before they can decide like, oh yeah, this is a thing that I want to do. Right? So it's totally fine to take that time. It's a very good question, Jeremiah. Very good question. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I feel like the more... Oh, you really can't decide for now? Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough, right? The more that I talk about this stuff, like the more internal reflecting that I'm doing as well, right? So this is also like a good exercise for me. Because like I say, like the most advice that I give here is pretty generalized, right? Because I'm trying to give the most people the best opportunity to get into the games industry as an artist, right? That's my role here as like an advisor, you know, if you could talk about it like that. So yeah, that comes with downsides as well, right? Where that sort of advice might not necessarily apply to you. Backfound Dev, I've done realistic props and environments on my portfolio, but I also like to explore other things in game art. It kind of depends on what you mean by that, right? If you're saying, because you can go very broad, right? Like you can go really broad and say like, hey, look, I'm interested in everything game art, so I'm also going to do animations and characters and all that kind of stuff. At that point, I would say like, maybe specialize. And then once you got a job in the industry, right? Like this is a general advice that I give. Once you get a job in the industry, then like branch out and do whatever the hell you want, right? Because the reason why I say that is the broader you go in the beginning, the longer it takes for you to get a job in the industry. Generally. Especially because I played all the stylized games growing up. It's always super nice to work on that style. I still remember playing Crash 3 when it came out on the PS1. Oh my god. Still remember playing the first one. And then all the Crash Team Racing games and oh my god. So many games. So many games that I played. Like the one that I think sparked my artistic journey was Revolt. I think it must have been that one, because I have this vivid memory of sitting in front of the TV screen with it on pause, and I would draw cool moments in that game like on like a piece of paper. I would just sit in front of the screen with like, I think the pause menu was just like in the middle of the screen, so I had to draw and like fantasize the stuff that was behind the pause menu. But I think that's the most vivid memory that I have from actually drawing something that was also like sort of game related, right? I think that's the first one. The first thing that I can remember at least. But that game, oh my god. Just racing around with RC cars. I loved it so much. When did that come out? Let's see. Revolt 99 on the PlayStation. 99. You used to draw Informer covers when you were around 12. Informer, that's a magazine, right? Of course it is. You said covers. We didn't have any like cool we didn't have any like cool magazines, I think, in. Oh yeah, I see. Is Game Informer the same thing? I don't remember. Yeah, we didn't have like any old magazines. I'm trying to think back because like I didn't have a lot of choice, right? Like my parents were kind of very strict, especially my dad, when it came to like the playing of video games. Like it was like, okay, you can play an hour a day and that's it. Which I don't hold any grudges when it comes to that. Like that was just like the thing, and I kind of hacked my way around the system, right? I would go to like friends across the street or go to like the public library and like hack the PC over there or something like that. Yeah, like well, the one shop that we had was like Game Mania, but I'm trying to think about like the magazines. I'm trying to think where we got our demo discs from, because that's how I used to play games, right? Like you would get these demo discs. Or was it like PlayStation Magazine or something like that? That used to have like a demo disc, and then you would get like a couple of games where you could play the demo from. I remember something like that. I just can't remember how I got the demo discs. My god. Jeremiah saying, I'm getting old and I still need to get started. This stresses me out. Screw that. Doesn't matter. Like, age is just a number. You're getting started. It doesn't matter. Like, I mean, yeah. I'm 30 and I got out, right? Like, I'm doing my own thing. Like, it's just life. It sounds like it's such a very, very generic thing to say, right? Or like, I don't know, just general life advice, I guess. Like, it doesn't matter that much. I know people that got in at like 40 and 45 and sometimes I think 50, I think. 45 is probably the latest that I've heard. And I think honestly I have more respect for people doing it at that age than like any younger age. Because like there's something crazy about like the stereotypical thing of being settled down, 45, having kids, having family, responsibilities, blah blah blah, and then just being like, hey look, I don't like this thing that I'm doing. I'm just gonna completely switch it up. There's something so crazy about them. Like, crazy as in like inspirational, you know? Because they just realize at a certain point, like, I don't like this. I'm gonna switch it up, you know? There's something so inspirational about that to me. Let's have a look. Justin Raymond Ramos is saying the pressure is real though. Like, I feel like there's a high valley where you need to get to make it or break it. Yeah, I feel like that's true. Like, there is definitely like a high barrier of entry. That's also why I'm giving all this advice of like having to specialize in being like really specialized and dedicated to like specific thing, right? Because that increases your chance of getting in so much. Yeah, I know that the pressure is real and that there's also not enough junior positions to go around, especially because the industry, I don't know, for some reason, especially now when the industry, especially in the last couple of years, was so in flux and people were switching it around, like it doesn't feel like the senior staff is there to support juniors all that well anyway. I'm generalizing again, right? But that's what I felt. But yeah, there's definitely like a high barrier of entry. Ransom Dunk! Last question, and then I'm gonna head off because we're over 2 hours already. But thank you so much for all the questions, people. I really appreciate it. Oh, before that, Jeremiah has got to run. I'd love to talk about this more in the voice chat one of these days, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'll be in voice chat randomly throughout the day. Whenever I want to chat, I'll hop into like the Discord for sure. But Bran, let's have a look here. What would be your advice for handmade or megascan vegetation in an environment demo reel? I like foliage and I want to learn, but I'm not aiming to be a foliage artist. Okay. So wait, so what would be your advice for handmade or megascan vegetation in a... Oh, I see. Sorry, I misunderstood. I would use megascan vegetation to support exterior scenes, or if you're doing interior scenes that has... Oh, no, it's completely fine, Brian. I just misunderstood. It's my bad. But I would use megascan vegetation to support what is already there, right? It kind of goes back to what Jeremiah was doing as well, where if you use megascans in a scene that is purely focused on nature, you're not really showing off that you can do nature, right? Because the focus should be on the nature part, but then you take it from megascans. However, if you do, let's say, a big castle and then you just want to flourish it up with like a couple of bits of really interesting looking foliage, that's totally fine, because it also doesn't say that you want to show off that you want to become a foliage artist, right? I think in general, using Megascan's foliage is totally fine as long as you're not trying to show off that you want to be a foliage artist in your case. I think or speed tree, yeah. You don't necessarily need to learn speed tree anyway. You can do a lot of very basic stuff that still looks good without having the need for speed tree. Especially if you're just doing like low foliage, right? If you just have like grass or like little shrubs, like you usually don't need speed tree for that. Doing a Last of Us inspired scene, just to clarify. Yeah, in well, it depends, right? Like what kind of scene you want to make for The Last of Us. If it's a scene that is like very foliage heavy, it would be good to show off that you can potentially yeah, how would I say this? Like if it's very foliage heavy, you know what? Let's take a step back. Just don't try to do anything that's super foliage heavy if you don't want to be a foliage artist, right? This goes back to what you're trying to show off, and the more that you show foliage off on your portfolio, the more likely it is that they're going to pick up on that and think that you might want to become a foliage artist, right? That's a very simple way of like dumbing it down. So try to pick something that is in The Last of Us games that doesn't have too much foliage, right? And maybe just has some ivy and all that stuff growing on it, but yeah, is not like a forest scene, for example. Thanks so much. No worries. Yeah, here's the thing, right? Like, it's fine to use all the tools to your disposal. Like, everything. Like, whatever you can do, whatever workflow you can find, it's all good. But just always think about the implications that you're setting when you are using those tools, right? Or if you're stubborn and you don't want to use those tools and you just make them yourself, right? Like it's all potentially showing something on your portfolio. I hope that makes sense. We're gonna leave it with that weird statement. Thank you so much, people, for being here. Thanks for all the good questions. Yeah, you can check out like the links below in the live stream. Go check out Beyond Accent, right? Not necessarily to have you in the community, even though that would be awesome. But there's like a whole bunch of articles and workshops and a whole bunch of free stuff that we just have there to share, right? So go check that out. And yeah, good luck on your environment art journey. And I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.